Journalist to this stage, happy to be joined now by our partners in this debate. In fact, the Tampa Bay Times and National Journal. Adam Smith is the longtime political editor at the Tampa Bay Times, covering national, state, and local politics for more than a decade. One of the very best in the trade. And besides, a lot of people just thought a GOP debate should have Adam Smith present. Beth Reinhardt is a political correspondent for National Journal. She is a Florida native, was a veteran political reporter at the Miami Herald for 11 years. But one piece of business, Senator Santorum, I had to go to a break. I didn't get you in on what we'll call the Iran round, because you've talked about this a lot, specifically as a last resort, if you'd said, as you said, taking out Iran's nuclear program. The problem with that, so many in the military tell you, is the target list. Where do you limit it? The airstrikes that some estimate would begin at 30 to 60 days sustained, taking out air defenses, all of that familiar language that the American people have just been through for a decade.
Well, the contrast with that is what happens if Iran gets a nuclear weapon and the entire world changes. Iran is not just another country or a little small country, as President Obama classically said during the campaign. Obama's Iran policy has been a colossal failure. It's been a failure because he's not been true to the American public about the threat that Iran poses to the world, not just to Israel, but to the world and to the United States. Bottom line is the theocracy that runs Iran is the equivalent of having al-Qaeda in charge of a country with huge oil reserves, gas reserves, and a nuclear weapon. That is something that no president could possibly allow to have happen under any circumstances. And when you ask the question, Brian, is this an act of war? Well, let's look at the acts of war that Iran, they are holding hostages. They are attacking our troops. The IEDs, the improvised explosive devices that are killing our troops in Afghanistan and killed them in Iraq and maimed so many, were produced and people were trained and funded in Iran specifically to kill American troops. You look at the ships that have been attacked by Iran. Embassies were attacked by Iran. Iran has plotted to kill the Saudi ambassador here in this country. It is a long list of attacks, of warlike behavior on the part of this regime. And to believe that if they have a nuclear weapon, they're somehow going to become into the community of nations is a reckless act on the part of a president. It would be reckless not to do something to stop them from getting this nuclear weapon.
Senator, thank you. And to interests of local and state politics, Beth Reinhardt will take over the question.
Senator Santorum, here in Florida, BP is still airing apologetic appeals on television, but there are proposals to expand offshore oil drilling. The state's most optimistic estimates say more drilling would create 5,000 jobs. But an oil spill would threaten Florida's tourism industry, which employs nearly 1 million people. Is that worth the risk?
What threatens the tourist industry in Florida, as we've seen, is a very bad economy. And a very bad economy that became a bad economy. Why? Because of a huge spike in oil prices in the summer of 2008. So energy is absolutely key to keep all of our country healthy, specifically Florida, which is a destination place. This is a place that relies upon people being able to travel and afford to be able to travel to come down here, relies upon an economy being strong. I was at a manufacturer in Sarasota County today and was talking about them as a manufacturer and that, you know, the importance of manufacturing jobs, yes, even here in the state of Florida, and the price of energy for them to be able to be competitive. It is absolutely essential that we have as much domestic supply of oil, that we build the Keystone Pipeline, that we create the jobs that would create and provide oil from domestic sources. Pipelines that run on the floor of the sea or pipelines that come through America are the safest way to transport oil. It is tankers that cause much more problems. Pipelines are the safe way. Building those rigs, piping that oil into our shore is the best way to create a good economy for the state of Florida.
All of you favor making English the official language of the United States, which could mean that ballots and other government documents would not be available in Spanish. But Speaker Gingrich, you're sending out press releases in Spanish. Governor Romney, you're advertising in Spanish. Why is it okay for you to court voters in Spanish, but not okay for the government to serve them in Spanish? Speaker Gingrich?
Well, first of all, you immediately jump down to a very important language, but not the only language. The challenge to the United States is simple. There are 86 languages in Miami-Dade College. 86. There are over 200 languages spoken in Chicago. Now, how do you unify the country? What is the common bond that enables people to be both citizens and to rise commercially and have a better life and a greater opportunity? I think campaigning, historically, you've always been willing to go to people on their terms in their culture, whether it's Greek Independence Day or something you did for the Irish on St. Patrick's Day. And I'm perfectly happy to be on Radio Mombi, and I'm perfectly happy to have a lot of support in the Hispanic community. But as a country, to unify ourselves in a future in which there may well be 300 or 400 languages spoken in the United States, I think it is essential to have a central language that we expect people to learn and to be able to communicate with each other in.
So to be clear, you would only have ballots in English?
I would have ballots in English, and I think you could have programs where virtually everybody would be able to read the ballots.
Governor Romney, can you take that question?
I think Speaker Gingrich is right with regards to what he's described. I'd note that in my state, we had a tradition of teaching people in the language of their birth. And so we had in our school systems people being taught in a whole range of languages. And we had to have teachers that could teach in Cambodian and Vietnamese and other languages. And our kids were being taught in foreign languages in our own schools. And we found at the end of their education experience, they couldn't all speak English well. It made absolutely no sense. And so we campaigned for English immersion in our schools and said, kids coming in will have a transition period, then we're going to teach them in English. Look, English is the language of this nation. People need to learn English to be able to be successful, to get great jobs. We don't want to have people limited in their capacity to achieve the American dream because they don't speak English. And so encouraging people through every means possible to learn the language of America is a good idea. Recognize, at the same time, we want people coming here from other cultures that speak other languages. That strengthens America. It's a great thing. But having them learn English is also a great thing for them and for their kids.
May I take that?
Congressman Paul.
Yeah, my answer is similar, but a little bit different, because at the national level, obviously, we have to have one language. I mean, we can't have multiple languages, so for legal reasons, we would have one language. But our system really gives us a way to be more generous, because if Florida wanted to have some ballots in Spanish, I certainly wouldn't support a federal law that would prohibit Florida from accommodating, a city election or a local election or a state election. I think that's the magnificence of our system, where you can solve some of these problems without dictating one answer for all states. But nationally, we should have one language.
Speaker Gingrich, I wanted to move on to a slightly different topic, the DREAM Act, which, as you know, would provide a pathway to citizenship for children who have been brought to the U.S. illegally if they attend college or enroll in the military. Now, Governor Romney and Senator Santorum have both said they would veto this legislation. Would you do the same?
No, I would work to get a signable version, which would be the military component. I think any young person living in the United States who happened to have been brought here by their parents when they were very young should have the same opportunity to join the American military and earn citizenship, which they would have had from back home. We have a clear provision that if you live in a foreign country and you're prepared to join the American military, you can, in fact, earn the right to citizenship by serving the United States and taking real risk on behalf of the United States. I would have that part of the DREAM Act I would support. I would not support the part that simply says everybody who goes to college is automatically waived for having broken the law.
Questioning continues.
I just note that's the same position that I have, and that is that I would not sign the DREAM Act as it currently exists, but I would sign the DREAM Act if it were focused on military service.
Thank you, Governor. Questioning continues with Adam Smith.
Let's stay on immigration for a second. Governor Romney, there's one thing I'm confused about. You say you don't want to go and round up people and deport them, but you also say that they would have to go back to their home countries and then apply for citizenship. So if you don't deport them, how do you send them home?
Well, the answer is self-deportation.